Well, for analysis, I'm joined by 7:30's Political Editor Heather Ewart and Chris Richardson from Deloitte Access Economics. And Chris, starting with you first, how does the government get itself to a surplus?
Basically, it does it by taking money away from corporate Australia, things like the cancelled company income tax cut, and also from high income Australia, delaying, for example, the change to superannuation caps there. Now, if you do that, that gives them enough to not only get back to the surplus that they had, but still juggle some money towards lower and middle income Australia.
But do you think that there are other cuts ahead and not necessarily from the Commonwealth?
Look, that's very true. Although the Commonwealth budget's taken a hit from what's happening in the economy, that's true for the state budgets, and that was spelt out very clearly tonight. GST receipts down over $11 billion across 4 years, very similar to the hit to the federal bottom line. The states will have a problem and they can't turn to the feds. The feds won't pay for it. They need their surplus.
And Heather, what are the politics of this?
Well, this, I think, is the classic Labor budget. The Treasurer, in his news conference in the lock-up earlier this evening before he went into Parliament, called it a Labor budget to its bootstraps. And I think that's pretty true. And there are probably some in his party who would think it is long overdue. You see this in areas like the cost of living package, which of course is also code for some form of compensation for any negative impact of the carbon tax when it comes in, but also the schools bonus, the list goes on. And this is all about, I think, trying to woo back voters in Labor's, what was once its traditional heartland. They've been deserting in droves. Labor has seen this in the New South Wales and Queensland state elections. It doesn't want this to happen in the federal election. And so this budget, I think, is very much geared toward those sorts of people, the battlers.
Well, one of the things that's vitally important from the government is the way that it is received, so they'll be sweating on the headlines tomorrow, and I know that you've had a bit of a preview.
I have had a preview, and I know the government would be sweating on the headlines, particularly in the tabloid newspapers. Now, there aren't going to be, I don't think, any horror headlines, but they will be quite varied. In the Treasurer's own state, for example, in Queensland, the Brisbane Courier Mail headline will be "Cut and Run," which I don't think is quite what he might have had in mind. I think the Adelaide Advertiser will have a headline referring to Black Swan. And the other papers, the Herald Sun and the Daily Telegraph in Sydney, I think will refer to this being an election sweetener, which of course it is.
Chris Richardson, one of the things that this government makes a point of over and over again, and in fact the budget papers make the same point, is that this budget will give the Reserve Bank room to move. We've already seen an interest rate cut of 50 basis points, but do you believe that there is more built in to this budget?
Well, in the actual assumptions, yes. I mean, Treasury does assume that interest rates fall from here, partly because that's what markets are assuming. Whether the Reserve Bank is cutting because of the budget is less clear. There were some good decisions and there were some tough decisions, but the net overall impact on the economy, not that big. Of itself, tonight's decisions may not give the Reserve Bank enough reason to cut rates. It doesn't stop lower rates, but maybe not because of the budget itself.
And Heather, you've said that this is a real Labor budget, but there will be pain for people in this budget. Where do you think the problems might lie?
Well, the problems, I guess, it depends where you stand in the electorate and what sort of salary, what your cost of living is. But the people that it might hurt, of course, will be wealthier Australians. And I don't know that will be terribly troubling the government because these are people that may not be voting for the government anyway. This is all very much about appealing back to its traditional support base.
Heather Ewart, thank you.